What John's going to do is put it in our machine, and then we're going to boost it up to YouTube in the coming days and play it on different formats within the community forums. Bakersfield has two. I'll put it up on the Front Porch Forum as well as anybody who's attached to this meeting tonight. Hopefully they can put it on their own Facebook page as well. So I think I'm going to wait for another 5 minutes because we're not quite at 7 on the big clock yet. We'll go to 7:05. And there, how's that? How was your day? How busy are you now? Hey, Katie, you go ahead and run it the way you want and interact with people the way you want to. We'll chime in when we can.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Brenda. My name's Katie Buckley. I am the director of the ARPA Assistance and Coordination Program for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I was invited tonight to talk to you about your ARPA funding and to share a little bit more information about that. I have a slide deck that is about 20 slides, but I run through it very quickly. So there'll be plenty of time for question and answer afterwards. I cannot share my screen, so I don't know who.
Yep, and I can do it.
If you don't mind giving me a little handoff there, that would be great. Thank you.
There we go.
See how that works for you?
Perfect. All right, let's see if I can get all my stuff to work here. And if you could just give me a little indication that you can see my ARPA Town of Bakersfield screen.
Yep. Can the people who are on the call see it? Bruce, can you see this?
I can see it.
Perfect.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, I am going to move super quickly. So I'm sure everybody's familiar at this point with ARPA, but I'll give a little overview, and here's what we'll cover tonight. So I'll do an overview, talk about the money that's flowing through Vermont and specifically to Bakersfield, timeline and planning for ARPA funds, eligible and ineligible uses, a really high level overview of reporting, a little bit about public engagement, talk a little bit about what I'm seeing both in Vermont and nationally, and the role of Vermont League of Cities and Towns and your Regional Planning Commission, and of course, questions. And just a little bit of housekeeping. Anywhere you see bolded, underlined language throughout this document, those are active links that either click through to documents, resources, other places, other web pages with information if you want to learn more. So the American Rescue Plan Act was passed in March of this year. It's one of the biggest stimulus packages that we've ever seen in the United States. Obviously, the purpose of it is to combat the economic and health implications of COVID. The money is being distributed through the US Department of Treasury. It is all being governed by the interim final rule, which is the implementation side of the American Rescue Plan Act. It's the rules of the road, and that was adopted by Treasury in May. And although public comment was taken on the interim final rule through July 16th, we still don't have a final rule yet. So in the meantime, the interim final rule is the rules of the road until we get more. So Vermont's share, Vermont's getting about $1.25 billion. A little over $1 billion goes through the state of Vermont. That will go through state agencies like the Agency of Natural Resources, Public Service Department, a few other state agencies and some other statewide organizations to allocate ARPA funding, their ARPA funding largely in the form of grant programs. There was $121 million that was due to go to counties, but because we don't have county style of government in Vermont, thanks to our legislature, governor, and the league, we all pushed on Treasury. And as a result, that county money was reallocated to municipalities. That's why all of Vermont's towns awards are so much bigger than you see per capita from the rest of the country. We have two metro cities. They are Burlington and South Burlington, and all the other municipalities in the state that received funds are called non-entitlement units of government, which are Bakersfield. And if we have representation from Fletcher tonight, you are also an NEU. If you want to know how much other towns got in terms of their ARPA money, you can click on that link right there that says here, and it will download a spreadsheet of all the payments, both local and county money, to every accepting municipality throughout the state.
Katie, you did say that this slide deck would be available.
Yes,
to us.
I'm gonna save it as a PDF when we're done, and I will email it to you, Brenda, and you can do with it what you'd like.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So timeline, by now, the first payments all already have been deployed. So there is cash in the bank. Since August, that money's collecting interest, which you are allowed to keep. The second payment, equal amount, will be sent out same time next year through the same channel. All funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024. All funds expended by December 31st, 2026. Anything not expended or obligated by those dates must be returned to Treasury. This is the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Planning Framework. Essentially, follow the rules and be prudent. Look for ways to use other people's money and pick uses that have long impact. If you can do those three things, you'll land right in that sweet spot target, and that's the ideal place to be. Oh. Okay, I might have skipped a slide there. That's kind of weird. My screen is doing some weird stuff. Sorry, I've had technology issues. So this slide looks different in real life. So when you get the slide deck, know that you'll be seeing something different. So what you can and can't spend your money on, hang on, let me back up one slide. There we go. There are 7 categories in the interim final rule on what you can spend funding: public health, negative economic impacts, services to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay, infrastructure, water, sewer, and broadband, revenue replacement, and administrative costs associated with your ARPA funding. Weird. This is a weird looking slide. That gray zone is actually an image. So within those 7 categories, there are 66 expenditure categories. These are the codes that you'll actually have to use when you report to Treasury on how you're spending your money. So if you can identify what your projects line up with in terms of expenditure codes right out of the gate, you're already, oh, I'm not sure what's going on. Did my screen, you still there?
Yes, we can hear you.
Do you see my screen at all?
Yeah.
Wow, everything just went black on my end.
We're seeing the what you can spend money on slide.
Okay. You might be seeing an Excel spreadsheet now.
See an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, let me see if I can get my slide deck back up. Sorry about that. So we're back to slide 1 again, correct?
What town are you in?
Let's just, I'm in South Burlington.
Okay, there we go.
We got Burlington Town.
That's a
Okay.
little different.
So that's the slide I was talking about with the 66 expenditure categories. Hopefully it'll be smooth sailing from here. So what you cannot spend your money on, your ARPA award is a federal award. So if you have projects that involve other federal money, like CDBG money, other federal EPA money, your ARPA award can't be used as a grant match for another federal program. What you'd want to do for those other awards is read the grant agreements and determine what can and cannot be used for match to know if your ARPA money can be used as a match. So read those grant agreements. You can't use it for pension funds, infrastructure not directly addressed in ARPA, rainy day funds, financial reserves, or to pay down existing debt incurred before March 3rd, 2021. Things to consider. You can pool your funds with other municipalities. So if you had a project that you wanted to do and some of your neighbors were looking to do the same type of project, a good example of that is perhaps a childcare center. You might pool your resources together to develop a project at a scale that makes more sense and is more financially feasible over the long term. You can transfer your funds to other eligible entities. And VLCT is really encouraging towns to take their time, think bigger, think about the long term, and the best ways to use the dollars for the deepest impact in your community. Because you don't have to obligate your funds until December 31st, 2024, you have lots of time to wait and see where other federal money lands so that you can really be thoughtful and strategic in the way you plan your spending. Reporting. All municipalities are required to report directly to Treasury. Since your grant award is with Treasury, you report directly to them. There's no middleman here, middlewoman. You might have gotten your money through the state of Vermont, but they were just simply a financial intermediary. They have no oversight over your funding. All municipalities other than Burlington, so all 276 other municipal entities have an annual reporting schedule. So on the first report will be due April 30th of next year, 2022, and then every April 30th through 2027. So you'll have to do 5 reports. All reporting will be through an online portal created by Treasury. So as you're beginning to think about spending and you're gathering documents, the most important part of every grant is to document, and then document some more. And as you're collecting your documents, make sure they're in a PDF format and saved into a nice organized digital file. So when you have to report, you have all that nicely organized and ready to go. That's the format they're going to want. And Treasury has issued a compliance and reporting guidance document. It's posted on our website along with a whole slew of other materials, FAQs, links to resource docs. It's a whole ARPA webpage on our website. You can go through that link right there. If you have the blct.org as a bookmark, you can just click the ARPA tab right in the top tab of the website. So public engagement, although public engagement is not a requirement of the ARPA funding, it is highly encouraged and it is implicit throughout the interim final rule. This is largely discretionary funding. If you have ever dealt in the world of grants before, never do you get your grant first and identify your project after. It's just sort of backwards. It's not how it's done. So because there's so much discretion, gathering input from your public is a really important thing to do to determine what your priorities are as a community, and then develop a plan for executing on those priorities if you can fund them through ARPA. So towns are doing everything. Oh, I'm sorry, was there a question? Oh, okay. Towns are doing the full gamut in terms of public engagement, everything from just a standing item on a select board meeting agenda down to dedicated websites with ARPA committees and surveys and public forum discussions on websites. Everything that you can think of, it all depends upon the community, what their needs are and what their capacity is. And like I said, all of those, if you click on any of those links, they'll take you through to those towns and what they're doing. So just some ideas that this is all pulled from the headlines is what it is. I went online just to do a little bit of surfing around to see what towns are doing throughout the state of Vermont. And there's a lot of consideration around water and wastewater. Those are pretty big. So, and then a lot of towns are very much in the exact same place that you all are in, which is taking a step back, learning, listening, and thinking and planning. So there's no clock that's really racing. You have plenty of time to do that. On the national level, this is a link here that will take you to the National League of Cities websites, and they have different policy issues that you can track and look at, and ARPA is one of them. So if you're interested to see what's happening on the national stage, this is a good website. Obviously, these are pretty large cities throughout the country, probably as big as the whole state of Vermont. However, a lot of the ideas that are put forth here could be scaled to Vermont scale and could be transferable. So it's interesting to see what others do that opens up the world of possibility in your own town. And this is the League's ARPA Assistance and Coordination Program, which is largely me. I am all ARPA all day, every day. I do a lot of talking. I do webinars, meetings such as this that we're doing tonight, targeted trainings. We have a dedicated ARPA email address along with my own email. A lot of email inquiries I get and provide insight. I help to demystify your ARPA funding. I have a lot of experience with federal awards on all sides, so I can assist you in whatever questions that you have. And if I don't have answers, I know where to get them. So I do a lot of interpreting of the federal guidance and trying to distill that in a way and pass along back to town officials so that it's in a more understandable and digestible format, because it can be pretty overwhelming. I work in close partnership with the regional planning commissions throughout the state. There are 11 of them. I meet with them once a week, every week. oftentimes more. I connect individually with them and we work together on different ARPA issues for different towns. They are an incredibly helpful and valuable partner throughout my work. And this is my contact information. So like I said, I do this all day, every day. Email me, call me, whatever you'd like. I'm here to help. And so I am happy to answer lots of questions. I'm going to stop screen sharing if that's okay.
Yep.
And we can get right down to the questions and answers and discussions.
I have everybody up on the screen right now.
Just so we know where
I
they're.
am. Let me just give the. Gallery, there we go.
There we go.
Mhm.
I don't know. Hi, Tempest. I don't know if you can hear us, but welcome to the group. So we've got some people from town. We've got some people from next town with Bruce. And I'll start off with questions because I think a lot of folks have been asking me questions, and I have to say, I don't know. And the hard part is when I tell them that it's related to COVID, I don't think they're making those links. Is there any particular way to guide them to ask better questions or ask questions about eligibility or what maybe their needs are specifically?
Yeah, I would say maybe what their needs are specifically. You know, there's a ton of gray area in this, and there's a lot of room for interpretation. So, you know, I often get asked a question, you know, would this be an eligible expense? And on its face, it might not be eligible. But when I ask, usually it's the municipality asking the question, I'll ask them, can you tell me a little bit more about what it is that you want to do? I get about 3 questions into it, and suddenly the project is eligible. You just have to talk about projects, tease out the parts that are relevant to ARPA, right? So doing a town office renovation on its face, no. But if you're doing a ventilation project that's for your town office and putting dividers in, all of that stuff, that's an ARPA eligible expense. You know, we have examples of a general store in some communities, right? And so general stores, you could work with your general store and provide premium pay for them because they provided they're eligible workers providing essential work during COVID. And essential work is that work where you had face-to-face contact with the public day in and day out, and your job could not be done remotely. So example is police, fire, medical workers. There's a definition of what essential work and eligible workers is in the interim final rule. We have that on our website in our FAQ, but it's that pocket of people who did that work, you can provide them with premium pay. There's lots of different, so it's not as simple as here's your question, here's your answer. I would say my most common answer is, it depends, right? When someone says, is this eligible? I say, well, it depends. Tell me more about what it is you want to do. And then it begins to sort of take on shape and round out what the project actually is. And it can be eligible. So I wish it was a simple yes or no, but it's not quite that simple.
So to your point, just the essential workers portion, are you saying that some of these funds could be used to supplement the essential workers pay and or give them that, what was, I believe, talked about throughout the whole pandemic, which was some kind of bonus for essential workers? Are you saying this could be used towards that?
It could be. Mm-hmm.
Depending upon the definition of essential workers.
Correct. So, you know, we have a lot of towns asking if town office staff are essential workers. And while you do, the work is critical that you do, it doesn't meet Treasury's definition of eligible worker and essential work, because your job could be done remotely. It's not like, you know, when you're working as a cashier in a grocery store, you can't do that job remotely. Yet everybody needed food, therefore they were performing essential work. Or, you know, medical staff in hospitals, essential work. Police, essential work. Firefighters, ambulance drivers, essential work. Eligible work.
I know.
My mechanic.
Pardon?
How about my mechanic?
No. Because you could drop off your car,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
Sanitation workers are another example of eligible workers. Because
know
they
that-
touch other people's stuff. Mhm.
Yeah, I know they were talking, not because it's in my realm, but they were talking data center workers because they can't work remotely. They have to be physically on site. I think that was back during Donald Trump had said that they were essential workers as well as at the state level for the state data center. But I get your gist as to what you're saying with the essential workers. The other question I had pertains to exactly where we're sitting. I brought this up to Brenda. So in this meeting room and or town building itself, we have the ventilation that you already brought up.
Mhm.
The space we have and the equipment we have, it's very nice that you said it looks well and all. It really is a modge podge of a very poor setup that we're trying to make work. And as I said to Brenda, I said, one of the things that I thought would qualify reading some of these items when I read the article Brenda sent us to do our homework on over a month ago. So let me take this off. Maybe it's clearer. So the thought process I had when reading it was so many people impacted by COVID and everything else. And every time we try to have these town meetings, some of the feedback we have is the audio when we record it is not that great. The video, they can't quite make out and things like that. Could we take some of the funds because many people no longer want to show up at the public buildings? Let's get realistic. Can we take those funds to use for the COVID as well as moving forward to update the setup we have here so that it's more viewable and audibly acceptable to our town constituents?
Hybrid meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, for the hybrid
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah. In fact, we're getting a lot of inquiries around that.
Yeah.
That it allows you to engage with your public, be open and transparent and have public conversations in a safe environment. Being able to do it in this way allows you to have meetings at different times than you may have had them before because you can participate in this manner. You know, let's say I'm a single mom and I have to be home with my little kids at night. I could participate in this way, but I can't come to a town office and
Right.
go to the meeting in person, but I can participate this way. Even if it's just putting it all on mute and listening, I at least have the option to participate and engage in some way. So hybrid meetings are a very popular item, you know, getting your equipment tuned up so that you can carry those out going forward in a way that's productive and higher quality.
And then of course, something to store all these videos on so people can watch it would be the final portion of it. You know, we put them up on YouTube, but we also need to store them, if I remember correctly, for some form of time. Well, we have them with, well, we could discuss.
We have the hard copy of the minutes.
The hard copies are going to suffice for viewing.
I believe
Okay.
We did some research on this, Katie, and basically it was thought that if we recorded it, it had to be available forever to our constituency or to the general public for review. And basically what I believe we worked out, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that our hard copy minutes that are taken by our secretary are the official copy, and these are just a recording, a rendition of the meetings.
Yeah, and I'm not the, just so you know, I'm not that's a more of an open meeting law type of question, and I would defer to my colleagues at the league and the Municipal Assistance Center to better answer that question, but I believe you're absolutely right, Brenda, and you might have talked to the state archivist in terms of how long that has to be archived.
Well, I'll re-ask the question because it's kind of critical to what we're going to do, but I can't think that every town would be burdened with keeping every record of every video. That would be insane.
Yeah.
But
Forever, right?
yeah, forevermore.
And you can't substitute your written minutes with a video. You
Correct.
still have to have written minutes. Those are the official record of the meeting.
Last question again for clarification, but thanks. Anybody?
I have a question. I see on the list that water and sewer, like St. Albans is using some funding for that. How does that coincide with COVID? You know, or how are they justifying that?
that water, sewer, and broadband are the three pieces of infrastructure that is authorized for spending through COVID, through ARPA, excuse me. And it might not be a direct, you know, health or economic impact, but that's what was identified in the interim final rule. So it's not roads and bridges, infrastructure, it's water, sewer, broadband. And broadband, obviously, because of remote work, school, I mean, broadband's sort of an obvious one, and water and sewer, a lot of people in disproportionately impacted by COVID populations throughout the country struggle with water quality issues and sewer quality issues. So those are the other pieces of infrastructure. We have very aging infrastructure or lack of infrastructure altogether. So
Right.
you'll see any towns and any projects for water and sewer and stormwater need to be eligible in the EPA's Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Eligibility Handbook. So if your project is eligible through those, either one of those two guidebooks, then you can use your ARPA funds to fund it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give you one example of what we've come up with as a possible within the context of water within the village. There is a system that runs our pump now for our reservoir that just runs on time. It comes on, it goes off, it comes on, it goes off. What we're looking at doing is redoing that system with a actual water level monitor system that turns it on when it needs to be filled, not just because the clock says, okay, we speculate that this is usage driven and we're gonna add water to the reservoir. This will keep us from over pumping it or even under pumping it, depending on the use. Again, we're on the fire district, and if we have a fire, that can deplete the reservoir pretty rapidly. And if it's level driven versus timer driven, it'll have an efficiency built into it as well. So that's one of the things that we're looking at.
Do you have you, where are you in the planning of that project? Have you?
Right now, there was a company that was selling that product to towns. And I've asked our folks in the water district to contact them, reach out. Let's get an idea of what the project costs. Let's get an idea of what we need to do to fit it with the ARPA requirements, because I don't want to have any clawback on any of these.
Yeah, I was gonna say, make sure it's an eligible project. And you might too, depending upon the cost of the project, you might reach out to the state and see if there's both state ARPA money and if it's eligible, state revolving fund. So there's state revolving fund is a ongoing program with the state of Vermont Agency of Natural Resources. It's an existing program. It gets funded every year through EPA dollars. And that's an existing program. On top of that, the state also has ARPA money. So when we talk about leveraging and other people's money, that's exactly what we're talking about. So you might be able to use your local ARPA dollars with maybe the state's ARPA dollars, with maybe the state's revolving fund, existing program dollars. See what money fits in to help bring down the cost of the project if you needed to bond to do that. Does that make sense?
It does, great idea.
Yeah, my only other question is, currently we're following a set of guidelines, as you were saying, that are like interim guidelines. So let's say we identify a project in the next month. Let's just pick a time frame. In January 2022, we say this is a project that fits, we're going to go forward. What happens when the finalized guidelines come down if it changes enough that that project no longer fits? Is that project grandfathered, or are we going to have to claw back money?
I'm not sure if grandfathered is the right term for it, but generally yes. That if you carry out work under the interim final rule and the final rule comes into play, that you are doing that under the interim final rule. So that, and honestly, this is just my 2 cents. I don't think that the final rule is going to be more restrictive than the interim final rule. If anything, it might be a little bit more lenient, right? It might be clearer, hopefully. I don't think it'll be more restrictive. So if you've already started your train down the tracks, I don't think that the tracks are gonna end. I think if anything, it'll get a little faster, hopefully.
Cool.
Bruce, do you have any questions? Alani, Linda, Tempest?
And if nothing sort of sparks tonight, don't worry. If it sparks at 3 a.m., you can email me.
Well, we got your phone
I'll
number. We'll
answer
just
you at
call.
3 a.m. I won't answer
Just
at 3
call.
a.m.
Go ahead, Bruce. I'm sorry.
Bruce, go ahead.
Uh-oh. Looks like Bruce froze. He's got cold feet. Come on, Bruce, you can handle it.
But he's
No.
frozen with a smile. That's nice.
It's awesome. He's happy.
Well, I just want to say, no, I'm observing. No questions, but really appreciate the opportunity to.
Oh, you bet.
Thanks, and Bruce, we'll post this where you can grab it and perhaps give that some distance in your town as well, because this is all applicable. It's everything here she's talking about is statewide as far as information goes. And again,
Yeah.
I'm going to encourage this to get out to as many people as possible. We'll probably do this again with Katie in January, where we may have some traction and some information on projects that we've started. Some of the stuff is going to go to town meeting with regard to a broad base of approval. And we've already got people asking us, can we lower our property taxes? Can we lower our taxes with ARPA money? That have been easy to say is no. But if you've got a bad septic system, if you need a replacement, there's actually other funding, not just ARPA, that's available for that. I just read where water and septic it wasn't USDA grants, but it was natural resources.
Yeah, Agency of Natural Resources. They have 5 priority areas, one of which is homeowner. And
There's people who are in need of upgrading or changing or fixing what they've got.
And keep in mind that of that, the state's $1 billion in ARPA funding, only a little less than half of that has actually been allocated already. So there's a almost 600 million that's left to be allocated in the next legislative session. So there's more money that will be coming. You just have to wait and see how it all gets doled out. There's, the infrastructure bill passed. In fact, what's today? The 7th?
7th.
On Thursday, the 9th, we're doing a webinar on the infrastructure bill and how that will come through Vermont. So we'll have the Secretary of the Agency of Transportation, Secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources, and the Commissioner of Public Service on there to talk about transportation, more water sewer money, and broadband money that's coming. USDA money. USDA has money for broadband. They got broadband money through that bill. There's the Build Back Better legislation that's not yet passed. And when that comes, there could be more funding opportunities through that. So that whole take your time and be patient thing is really around keeping your eye out for other money to pair your money up with so that you end up stretching your ARPA dollars to go as far as they can go. Because you certainly don't want to put all your ARPA money out there and spend it on something that you could have gotten funding from another program for, or done your project bigger at a more sustainable scale. Just, I don't know if you have a project like that in your community, but let's say you're a small town that wanted to do a decentralized wastewater system to develop housing. Your system could have, if you used your money, maybe your system only does 20 houses, where if you were able to pair it with some more federal funding, you could have done 50 houses, right? To really grow your grand list and to help strengthen your community. So wait for that money to land. It's worth seeing, especially if it matches up with the priorities that you're starting to identify in your town.
Bruce, did you have another question? Bruce froze again.
Bruce has an internet problem going on.
Yeah.
You can
that's
pop it
okay.
in the chat, Bruce, if you're struggling.
Yeah,
with
he,
I
he
saw
sent, he said he had no questions
Okay.
back in the chat.
Okay.
How about, we'll just go round robin. Lalani, anything?
I don't have any specific questions, no, but to to repeat what Bruce said, thank you very much for your information. It's helpful to have your insight and your expertise.
Oh, you're welcome. And this is a complicated funding tool, unlike anything any of us have ever seen.
How about Tempest? Who's Tempest?
Yeah, I have a question. It's Rosalie. Hi, Brenda. Hi, John. My question, listening, I came late. I was watching Brenda. No, I was down at the Christmas trees in the village. A question that I have, who has the final say, Katie, on this
Question.
money when does come to the town? Do we put it to a vote somewhere?
No,
Uh,
it's as simple.
Who's in
as
charge?
the select
Who's
board.
in charge of who's in charge of the final say of this money?
The select board is the arbiter of how the funds get spent. They're the final. So in terms of how it's spent, there's no authority that here's our list. Who do I send it to for approval? There's none of that. There's no in between who makes a yes or no decision on your funding. The select board makes the decision. So the select board determines that it's eligible, and the select board decides on what the money will be spent. And
So
if-
the
go ahead.
people in the town,
Yep.
the people in the town that, well, I guess I should be asking Brenda, I don't know.
Yeah.
Who has, oh my goodness, we have 5 select people, correct?
Yep.
And everybody in town is, not even everybody's participating and coming to the meetings or anything. Am I correct, Brenda?
Correct. One of the things that we can't do is make the horses come to the water. We can make sure that we cover all our bases with exactly
How
this. Say again?
How can it become more, I'm just curious, how can it become more controlled, I guess I want to say, with the townspeople,
I
not
don't
just the
know.
select board?
I don't know, Kate, do we offer $5 for everybody that attends the meeting? And we just bribe
No,
people to come, say, come on.
I think what Rosalie was asking was, how do you get together some form of committee or something that the townspeople have more control over the ARPA spending versus the 5 select board? Is that correct, Rosalie?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I can tell you in other towns, a lot of towns are starting to form ARPA committees. So the select board, whether it's in some towns, they're using their planning commission. In other towns, they are finding interested residents who are interested in participating and maybe have some expertise in money, for lack of a better word, that can put together some processes for gathering input from the public and creating a process for that, and then making a series of recommendations to the board based on their process of what they've completed. So the select board might create a ARPA committee, give it a specific charge. Here are your roles and responsibilities of what we want you to carry out. Carry it out in this time frame, and then here's the deliverable that we want at the end of this committee period. So it's an ad hoc committee, and that helps maybe involve the public more, and it helps spread some of the work out so that the burden doesn't rest squarely on the select board to gather all the input.
For me,
Does that help?
Yeah, like I said, I'm a type of person, I've lived here for 60 plus years, and I would just have, I just like to see if we get a good sized chunk of money, I would like to be able to see, I'd like to see more control as a resident versus just the select board. Sorry, Brenda.
We don't have the control, we have the yes or no. Basically, what we're gonna do is make sure that the funds are eligible, that it isn't a one-time ask of $350,000 for some project, and that we have an equitable distribution of funds through everybody. We're just, again, essentially, the select board's charged me with developing the criteria for approval of these requests, grants, whatever it is, and I filter it to the select board. I'm not gonna sell it to the select board. I was gonna say, here's what Rosalie wants this money for. Here is what John wants this money for. Here's what I want to do with it. my project. So again, there's gonna be a whole bunch of things that we're gonna look at, and I'm sure we can spend $1 million easily. What we have is just under 400,000. And half of that
Now,
is,
Now, in the sum, you said we're gonna be getting a matching amount again, the same what we already received?
total amount will be just under $400,000.
Oh, I thought we'd already received some.
We did. we got
Received
half
about
of that.
half that. Mhm. So if your award is, I think 369,000 maybe, was that, am I in the ballpark there?
I think that's close, yeah.
Yeah, I can actually look if you want to hang on a minute. I had it on my slide. That was one of the only, I'll tell you in a sec, but you've received exactly half of that already.
And we, unlike FEMA money, we're able to put this in a interest-bearing account. So it's making money for us as well. It's up at the community trust bank up in Enosburg. And one of the things that I have the pleasure of doing is not spending any of it right now. We're not in any position to move it other than to pay my salary, which we've got, and also we're going to work to account for this in a way. So some of it is going to go to the treasurer for the work that she does for us, because we need accurate record keeping. We need minutes of our meetings and things of that nature. So there's administrative costs that go with this, and that's something that is allocated and is able to be used for the ARPA money.
There we go.
Nobody's gonna get rich over this. There it is, 396,000.
937.76.
Yeah, so that's the total award. So we've got, divide
Divide
that
that
by,
in half, and that's what's sitting in the bank right now. And the money is, it's a lot of money. It's probably more money than your town has seen ever come with
Yeah.
no direct purpose, right? You have to decide
Yes.
for it. But on the flip
Yeah.
side of that, it's not enough money to solve all your problems either.
this is the opposite of grant, money coming to us from a grant. This is money that we have to account for through grants. So we get to write the grants, we get to approve the grants, and we get to allocate the money, pay it out as those grants come to us. And those grants are gonna have a responsibility, as all grants do, to report to us what they do, because I gotta report to the Treasury Department what we did with the money. Very precisely what we did with the money.
Well, I was remembering in the very beginning of this whole project way back months ago that we put a committee together, which is the community trust thing there that we're all a part of. Is that?
No, Rosalie, this is a different project completely. This
Okay.
is something totally separate than that committee that we're working on. That's
That's
for the community store.
Cooperative Trust.
Yeah.
And we're independent of ARPA. At this particular point, we're looking for outside grants. One of the things that ARPA will let us do is actually hire somebody to work with us to get grants that match ARPA funding, that will bring in other dollars to us. One of the things that Katie, I'm so excited about is I just learned about for broadband is the Department of Agriculture money that is now available that Senator Leahy brought us for, again, broadband for our towns. Every town is going to be able to access that, whether it's individually or as a community. There's a lot of money in that as well. So many of these things require some pretty good detail, and hiring somebody that can both use that money to bring us more money is going to be important, as well as helping us fashion what is a good grant structure. And I think, Katie, if I'm not mistaken, on the VLCT website, there's information on what language can be used in grants, or Senator Leahy actually has on his website how to write a grant on there. So there's all sorts of resources available for us.
I didn't hear what you said about Senator Leahy's website. They have what?
They have a spot on how to write a grant.
Link.
Yeah, and I mean, look to us. We're looking to try and put together a grant program, I guess you could say, where we would do some webinars on how to write grants, how to source funds. That's a real skill. And the more savvy you are at it, the better you are to advance local projects, because grants are really, they're out there and they're very competitive. So how do you write grants in a way that you are competitive? And you have to know how to do that. And, what's special and unique about grants is you can have a project, but you can tell many stories around that one project, right? So I'll use your community, your country store, your general store as an example. So your general store is a food source for your community. It's probably the food source for low-income folks in your community. You probably don't have a grocery store, correct? So
Not in the town.
We have a quick stop.
yeah, so it's access to staples and local food. It's a job creator in that it employs people in your community. I mean, there's a bunch of different stories that you can tell about that one single project, depending upon what your grant opportunity is that you're seeking, right? So you can cobble
Well, I'm
together
glad-
lots of pieces of funding that makes you having to raise, local private dollars less, more grants.
Thank you, Brenda and John, for clarifying the two separate things that's going on. I guess I was a couple of minutes late and missed stuff, but thank you. I think this has been really educational for me tonight.
Rosalie, we have another meeting for that tomorrow night.
I'll send you that link as well. That one's gonna be all virtual for the Cold Hollow Cooperative Trust.
Okay.
Also, one of the things you might have missed is this discussion is actually part of the slideshow that Katie was showing us, and that will be available as well. There's 66 categories that you want to look through and see where you believe your project would fit. And that's going to be part of the criteria for what we look at as first me and then the select board to carry that through to where you get handed the money. And so writing the grants to us is going to be essential for our record keeping, our tracking of the money and my reporting to the Treasury Department, so I don't get to spend the winter in a federal penitentiary. That's my goal.
I have a question for Katie and Brenda regarding what it looks like when we start getting submissions. The list on some of your early slides, Katie, showed that some towns have already or identified what they're putting it towards, and it really, a lot of them sounded like it was a singular project, whether it was broadband or water projects. What are you seeing in terms of vetting? It sounds like we're kind of taking an approach where we're going to receive submissions for an equitable division of the money we've been given. But it sounds like some towns have identified a singular project that their funding is going towards. How are you seeing towns decide how to distribute the money?
I don't think a lot of towns are actually spending yet. I think they're in the same place that you all are, where they're talking, they're making lists, and they're thinking on how they want to execute. A couple of towns are a little bit further down the road, and they're creating almost a rubric for selecting projects. There's in almost all of those, I'm seeing a tie-in with your town plan, which is a great one. So if you have a town plan, if the project is in compliance, if it's ARPA eligible, that's the first one, of course. And if it has a tie-in with town plan and it has a tie-in with other priorities that you set as your, primary priorities for your community based on what your unique needs are in that community. And I wish it was a one size fits all. It would be so much easier if it was a one size, like if here's the criteria, here's what you come in with, every town does the same thing. 1, 2, 3. It would be so much simpler, but because every town is choosing their own path, it's not like you can come up with one set of criteria. But in those towns where they have one project, Like if it is a water or sewer project and they're plugging all of their funds into that, that's their number one project and they're putting all their money there, it makes it a heck of a lot easier because you're tracking against that one project. The more that you grant out funds to individuals and businesses and direct assistance, there's more to track there. And it all depends upon the municipality's capacity to be able to do all that.
Mhm.
And in some towns, they just don't have the capacity to get that granular with it. And so if you're doing direct assistance to businesses or to households, there's also a lot of money at the state level in terms of ARPA funds that is, you know, we don't have county government. We have state and we have local, and that's how it's taking place. And there's a lot of programs on the state level that you can direct your residents to get direct assistance. There's rental assistance if they're struggling. There's been utility assistance. There's homeowner assistance in the form of mortgage, taxes, insurance, household expenses, that program that's about to be stood up once we get approval from Treasury. So there's a lot of programs to direct people to on the state level. If small towns don't want to do that level of direct assistance, they can point people to the state. There's some towns who still want to do that, even though the state is also doing it. There are towns who are saying we're just going to give to our nonprofits. So we have 4, town nonprofits that we're going to figure out how to dole the money out to that. Every town is sort of choosing its own, it's choose your own journey.
It's interesting to hear those different tactics, whether it's, distributing to nonprofits or whether it's, a singular project. I think I saw some more slides about a lot of towns are just doing listening sessions to get those. So I think there's a lot of conversation that we need to have in terms of how we want to go about this before we start receiving any kind of applications. We need to think about that criteria and identify
And
it.
you have time. You have time, which is a rare, a rare thing. You have essentially 3 years to obligate. So to commit to what you're going to do. So even if you took the next year and planned and laid out a roadmap for how you're going to get to a decision, you can do that. You don't need to make a decision in the next month or so. You can plan it out with a methodical process that brings you arrive at a decision that you can then pass the straight face test with anybody who asks you. Here's why you did get funded and here's why you did not get funded. And that's really what you want to be able to do fairly, to be able to tell people that and not say, that didn't make any sense. That's
Or the worst part of that is, nobody told me there was money available. That's what I don't want to hear. Down the road when we've allocated maybe a third of this or 2/3 of this, and people said, well, nobody told me this was available. I want everybody to know, Rosalie, to your point, everybody needs to be involved, whether they choose to be involved or not. That's up to them. It's nothing that I can push down their collective space or throats or anything like that. It's not meant to be that way. People should know about it. That's what we're trying to do with these meetings, with the videos. Other people who don't use computers, yeah, I've met some people this past week that don't use computers at all. Who's going to tell them?
Do you have a electronic sign that your highway department uses?
No, we have a board that they update with the pie sale.
Oh.
That's what we have.
A survey would work
Highway
really well.
department, in my old town, our highway department had an electronic sign for road work. And that's what I used to program information and stick it right at the most prominent intersection in town for when I need people to participate and they say, oh, I never saw that. I'd be like, well, you must not have driven for the last month.
Right.
Sign's been there and it's been on. And I know you drive by it because I know where you live. Yeah.
Like the people who drive over the notch and don't see the sign.
Yeah, somehow.
And that's it. Linda, did you have any questions?
Just, I like the idea that Katie has narrowed up, what this money is available for and ideas of how to get the word out. I like the idea of the survey. That could be done in a mailing and nobody would have an excuse that I didn't know. That's because you shred before you read,
I was thinking.
You could put a message in your town report.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Not everybody gets the town report. The town report is not mailed out.
I was thinking town meeting day, Linda. If you decide not to come to town meeting day, that's on you. But that's the biggest
What do we
information.
have?
dump.
It comes, we have about 1,000 people, on the voter list, and about 65 of those come to town meeting.
Right.
So a mailing is still the best way to get the word out.
How often do you bill taxes?
Once a year,
Yep. Yep, so you would have done it already in October, probably.
October.
Mhm.
There's other ways to do this, and we also have been spitballing a lot of ideas with the Full Hollow Trust that we're working on, because we definitely need to get, in order to have grants, we need to have data, we have to have people that have input, we need to have community input. Do we really want a general store there? Or do we want a video game hall? What do people want in town? All these things can be dovetailed into a questionnaire that gives us both some information for the store and some information about ARPA. And I think it might be good as a group that we're gonna meet tomorrow night, is to maybe talk a little about this among our group, because we've got a good core of people. Rosalie, you've been to a couple of our meetings with regard to the store, and there is a core of folks that wanna get things done in town. And I'm talking to a handful of them right now, and there's a couple of people here in the room with me as well. So, it takes energy to do these things. It takes time to do these things. You're retired from farming now, right, Rosalie?
Yes, yes.
And being the person that lives right
And
next door to
reluctantly.
the store, I can tell you that the location of the sidewalk across the street takes away a lot of parking for the store. And that,
Mhm.
if you ask
Yep.
Mark LaRush, when he had the store, he said nothing hurt his business more than taking a hunk of the parking for a sidewalk on that side of the street.
Hmm.
So is that the best location for a store? Yes, we do need a store, but
I
What's the
don't
best
don't
location?
disagree with you, Linda.
That's for
And I
tomorrow,
think if
though.
people who had horses and buggies way back when the store was built had figured out for auto traffic, might look a little different. I'm wondering what it looked like back then, when people pulled up on their horses or in their buggies or in their clapboards and,
they
how
pulled
that.
up on the edge of the road on the opposite side of the road,
There you go.
and they weren't on a sidewalk.
That's right, Linda. I remember coming to church with horses in the sleigh.
Let's move.
Well, we're wrapping up on an hour. We've got a commitment from you to get us the information in the slide deck formation. We've taken some notes tonight that may or may not make it into a venue for us to read. We're gonna do this again, but this format that we've done is going to be up on YouTube. And so we can take it around to whoever we want. We can advocate that it's here for people to look at. And we also, the LCT has a great website if you want to get into the weeds on everything that we've been doing here tonight and talking about it. So much thanks to Katie Buckley from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. You have her address, you have how to get a hold of her, and please do so. We have money we want to spend. We have money we want you to spend. And so let's get this going somehow. And we'll be back here probably sometime in early January again to recap anything that anybody put together. And hopefully by then we may have a ARPA committee that'll work. So, thank everybody for being here tonight. Katie, any last words?
No, thank you so much for inviting me and keep the conversation going. And I'm happy to come back and work with you all in whatever way I can. And if you need anything, tell me. I welcome feedback in terms of resources and that sort of stuff. So
We've developed good communications over the last few months, and you can also write me. I'm available and I'm here at the town hall more times than I want to be, but it's okay. It's what we're doing. And thank everybody for coming. Linda, did you have the last word?
Nope, just thank you to everybody. Appreciate being part of this.
Thanks. And to everybody who attended tonight or who will see this video in the future, thank you very much. And it's democracy requires you to participate, believe it or not. And this is democratic. So let's do that. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Rosalie, we're not going to turn you off. We'll just leave.